Hello, bonjour and welcome to your new wine video. I'm your host Julien and today we are going to be talking about the different types of grapes that make the different types of wines. Of course, you've heard about Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or Pinot Noir, but what are they exactly and why do they matter? Well, I'm going to tell you all about it, or almost. As usual, I will break things down into 3 small and digestible chapters for you. First, we will look at what are these grape varieties, then we will consider where the most popular ones come from and why, before eventually talk about why they actually matter to the taste of wine. Let's go! Well, grape varieties are essentially different types, of grapes. Just like there are different types of apples or pears, tomatoes or olives or different types of fruits and vegetables, grapes can vary in color, size of the berries, size of the bunches, productivity or yield in the vineyards, and of course the taste and the flavors that they've got. Each type of these different grapes is called a grape variety, so that's how we define it. In French we say cépage. You have to know that the grapes used for making wine, those type of wines are almost invariably different from the ones we buy for eating as a fruit, which are called table grapes. The varieties used to make wine are called simply wine grape varieties. For example, the most planted grapes in the world are Kyoho in China and Sultanina in the US. But those are never used to make wine. You will see Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon on the wine labels, but you've never seen Sultanina on a wine label, have you? Some rare grapes are used for both making wine and for eating, such as Muscat or Chasselas, for example. The most famous wine grape varieties are Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Merlot or Zinfandel, for example, as red wines, and Chardonnay, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Muscat and Pinot Grigio as for the white wines. Some might think that these names are types of wines because, well, you see them on wine labels. In fact, they are rather the names of the actual grapes these wines are made from. There are over 10,000 different grape varieties, but it's pretty much always the most popular ones that are used for making wine, simply because it's just easier to sell the wine with a recognized name on it. It's interesting to note that the 13 popular grape varieties represent a third of the vine area that is planted in the world. Grapes have almost become brands when it comes to wine at this point. Perhaps confusingly, in Europe, wines are generally named after places, regions like Rioja in Spain or Champagne in France, for example, cities or towns like Bordeaux in France or Barolo in Italy, or even rivers like the Rhone in France or the Mosel in Germany. You might be wondering how come there are so many different types of wine grapes and where do they all come from? What's important to understand here is that grape varieties are essentially different types of plants, different plants that have been selected over time for their agronomic characteristics. Essentially, that's their ability to produce grapes and good grapes under different types of climates, especially in Europe. The wonderful thing about vines, about grapevines, is their ability to pump up water from the ground, especially from arid soils, and also to capture the sun to produce an abundant and very sweet juice. Grape juice is very sweet and that was particularly appreciated in ancient times. So wine was invented in the Middle East, around Mesopotamia, and that's thousands and thousands of years ago. But it really took off in popularity in Europe, especially under the ancient, as you would have heard, the ancient Roman Empire, who really spread the culture of vines and the wine culture all around the continent of Europe. The reason they loved wine so much, beyond its ability to make people and to make us, joyful, was also because it allowed to create wealth out of poor soils, even from where virtually nothing else valuable would grow. So they taught the locals in different areas and countries of Europe to cultivate vines in their respective areas, from Germany to Spain and of course in France. From there, each region selected grapes that grew well under their own climate and their own soil. They also chose grapes that made the type of wines locally that they'd like to drink and the wines that went well with the food they were having in the different countries. And that's how 2000 years later we have such a wide variety of different grapes and different wines spread all around Europe. That's also why virtually all wine grape varieties are European, because the culture of wine was born and perfected over there over many centuries. So most international wine grapes, the ones that we broadly produced all around the world, are now French, the one we see on wine labels. And that's probably because the French were the ones that went the furthest into selecting grapes to make fine wines in a variety of different climates as you find in France. So Cabernet Sauvignons, the Chardonnays, the Pinot Noirs, the Merlots, the Syrahs, the Sauvignon Blancs, so the Gameys, all of these are French of origin. But the Italians have an enormous diversity of grapes as well. There, virtually every village has its own grape, leading to an incredible and unique variety of different wine styles, much more diverse than what you can find in France even. So famous Italian wine grape varieties are, for example, Sangiovese or Nebbiolo, as well as Glera, the grape behind Prosecco sparkling wine. Zinfandel, that is popular in California, is also Italian. It's a cousin of the Primitivo grape. In Spain, you will find more wine grapes, so you will find Tempranillo, for example, in Rioja, or Garnacha, that is known as Grenache. The Germans have grown the famous grapes like Riesling or Gewürztraminer. But in the end, what does this all mean for who's learning about wine? And more simply, what does this mean for enjoying our wines a little bit better? So each and every grape has its own characteristics and its own flavor profile. Some are more aromatic than others, meaning, they smell more pungently. Some have more color, as you can see, or more tannins. You can see the variety of colors here, or more acidity, especially in white wines, etc., etc. So each grape also generally has a few signature aromas like lemon and butter, and this is particularly true in Chardonnay, but you will find also some cassis in Cabernet Sauvignon, you will find some black cherry in the Merlots, you will find plum and prune in Zinfandel, or for example black pepper and blackberry in those delicious Syrah wines. So essentially, grape varieties are the first stage of the immense diversity of wine that we find in the world of wine, because they are obviously the core ingredient for making wine. Even the smartest winemaker cannot make the same wine with different grapes. That's just not possible, that's just not going to happen. Then of course, each grape will have a slightly different expression depending on where it's grown. As we say in French, this is going to be depending on the terroir. Understanding grapes is the first stage, the first phase of understanding wine. But then sometimes, of course, winemakers blend different grapes into the same wine, and that's to combine and elevate the qualities as a whole and make a blend that is greater than the sum of its components. But if you don't mind, we will leave the blending for another video. I will make a video explaining what is the blending and how to make it and what is the purpose of it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you soon in the next one. Au revoir, santé.